Hi everyone, my name is Roger Lapuh. I'd like to talk to you today about Fabric Connect automation and extension to the edge. I'm doing this together with Ludovico. He will be doing a demo afterwards, and he will be showing you the technical details on how this really works in action. So I'm going to talk about it in slides, and he will then show it with real switches and network management solutions. So let's dive into this. This automation Fabric to the Edge solution is part of our Infinitive Enterprise architecture and enables effortless experience for our customers. So let's dive into it. The evolution of the Infinite Enterprise network. So what we're showing here is our Fabric solution enables an end-to-end automations infrastructure. And today in this part, we're going to talk about the core, campus core and edge expansion of the Fabric. So basically, we're bringing everything together, the branch solution, the data center, the metro, and the campus core and edge into an end-to-end unified fabric. And for that, we have been working on a few things to simplify the operation of a Fabric to the edge solution. So what did we tackle? We tackled the onboarding of switches. That means when you deploy switches, we make sure we can automatically onboard them to the network management infrastructure. As basis of that, we have automated the Fabric deployments. So basically created a zero-touch Fabric solution. We are automating the service provisioning, and you will see that in the demo how that will work. And obviously, and also in addition to that, we have automated the policy management solution. As part of the architecture for an edge solution, campus edge solution, let's look at all the elements that build that automation infrastructure for an edge solution. So what you see here is an MDF, 2 aggregation layer switches, and an IDF solution. Here, a bunch of edge switches that connect an access point, a wireless access point, a client, a wired client, a phone, and also here a camera as an IoT example. So all of that here as an example connected to an edge solution. Then we see the connectivity for of those edge switches, how they're wired up. So they're basically connected like a stack. They're not a stack, but they're connected like a stack, and then have a dual homed connection back into the aggregation layer. So what are the automation elements that we're bringing here together? The foundation of this automation here is all enabled by the Autosense ports. And I'm going to talk about these Autosense ports in detail in the next few slides. So all ports, when the switch is unpacked, deployed, all ports are automatically Autosense enabled by default. They're up and running. And you will see that when Ludo shows the demo, he will restart these edge switches without a configuration, and they reboot, and they all come up with Autosense enabled on all the ports. So what is this Autosense? We'll talk about that. So first, zero-touch Fabric will be running. So these switches will come up. Zero-touch Fabric is established. Next, then the switches will create an onboarding ISIT, basically allow anything that connects to this infrastructure, including the switches, to be onboarded to the network management infrastructure. That's an onboarding service created by default. The next element that we have is then when the switches have reachability, they get an IP address, and then they get, then they automatically reach out to the network management infrastructure, including radius, to get the services attached. Top of that, then they get, when users join, we have authentication, radius-based authentication of the users, part of the automation here, including VLAN ISIT deployment, as well as policy assignment. Auto-attached Fabric, basically the ability that when an access point or another device that is all Fabric attached capable is connected, that this automatically is sensed and configured. Then the next step, phone integration, automatic phone integration support, and automatic IoT device integration support. So these are all the elements. I'm going to show you quickly how this works with these Autosense enabled ports. So again, the switch is booted up, no configuration, all ports are Autosense enabled. And you see those little brains there on the switch, that basically these switches are smart now. These ports are all smart. They have this capability enabled by default. And then based on what they detect, what's connected to them, in the top here, you see a switch is connected. The switch will then, the two switches will say, oh, I'm a fabric link, I'll bring up the fabric. Or it says, oh, a fabric attach capable access point is connected. Then that fabric will, the connectivity will be turned into fabric attach connectivity. Or if a user is connected and EPNIP authenticated through Radius, then we can deploy services. We'll see that in the demo as well. Or if a phone is connected, the phone is detected and phone services are deployed to the port automatically. Or if something else is connected and no Radius is there, then it will be ending up in the guest ISIT. So basically what we're showing here is that the ports have a state machine, and the state machine will detect what's connected to it, and it will convert to whatever it's required to be. So this capability, I didn't mention this in the beginning, this capability is shipping with VSP release 8.3, so it's in the market already, and you can use it today. So here's an example of how this could be unfolding, and it basically showing what the demo then is going to do to show in real action. So here a switch is connected to network management infrastructure, and then the device grabs an IP address through DHCP and then onboards to the network management infrastructure automatically. So that would be step number one. Now, if a second device is connected, you see that these Autosense ports basically convert into ISIS links, into fabric links, and the fabric will establish automatically between the switches, and then the device can reach out over this newly established fabric connection to the network management infrastructure on board, and then service provisioning can happen from, or any kind of provisioning can happen from the network management infrastructure back to this newly connected switch. Again, here, this VSP2 here would be deployed without any configuration, and all this connectivity and onboarding happens automatically. Now let's look at the next device. Let's say we're connecting a fabric attached capable switch. It could be an EXA switch, an ERS switch. This connectivity would detect, the Autosense ports would detect, oh, this is a fabric attached capable device. Let me bring up fabric attach on that link, and at the same time, let me bring up the network management onboarding segment, this pinkish connectivity or dashed line there. That will be basically the onboarding segment, so that this newly attached device, again, only without any configuration, could be reaching out to the DHCP server, get an IP address, and then reach out to the network management infrastructure. So next step would be maybe an fabric attached capable access point is connected to the VSP there. Automatically, the port, Autosense capable port, would convert into fabric attached port, and then there would be onboarding capability to the network management infrastructure through that onboarding service. Again, there was no configuration necessary on the VSP2. This connectivity happened automatically. The device grabs a management IP address, and then from that point on, centrally can start to be configured manually. So it's all about zero-touch deployment, zero-touch provisioning solution here. If I connect the phone, same there. Through LLDP, we detect there is a phone connected, an IP phone connected. Then we would deploy voice configuration to this port. Obviously, also then this phone, then once the voice configuration is pushed down and signaled to the phone, the phone can then connect to whatever call server it needs to, or this voice connectivity service that has been pushed down to the phone. Again, automatic. There is after the VSP2 was onboarded, we sent him a global configuration. Here is your voice service configuration, but that's it. There is no port configuration required. These ports turn into phone ports, fabric attached ports automatically. Similarly, if a PC is connected, again, the PC is detected, Radius authenticated, and there is no configuration required on the port. The port detects what it is connected to, and it then assigns the necessary configuration automatically to the port. In this case, probably there is a authentication of this client connected to this port, and a service is sent down automatically through Radius, and then this PC then communicates over this yellow service to wherever it needs to communicate to. And then on top of that, also a policy, basically a filter can be sent through Radius to this port without any pre-configuration of the port. The point here is of this demo and of this slide deck is to show that you don't need to pre-configure anything on the switches. They can be deployed with zero configuration. There is some global configuration pushed down while onboarding, and Ludo will show you that. But other than that, these switches are really zero touch, zero configuration. That's the whole idea. Now, the point here is, and now basically summarizing what I've talked about, is that the way we're envisioning to deploy Fabric to the Edge is not that we deploy stacking, but basically that we deploy those switches without a configuration at all. The stacking connectivity, quote unquote, automatically establishes over those yellow NNI connections that interconnects those stack switches. But it's not stacking, those are individual switches. But the point is they are without any manual configuration. So the idea here of this Fabric to the Edge solution is minimal configuration, really effortless, seamless, zero configuration solution for the edge, where everything is automated and sensed automatically. So simplification of the edge is really the goal of a Fabric to the Edge solution deployment architecture. So thanks for listening to my part. Now I would like to hand it over to Ludo for the demo to basically see what I've talked about in action in the next few minutes. Thanks a lot. And Ludo, please take it away.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, so let's do a little demo here. So what you see here is a little fabric we have with 4 switches, which are running Fabric. Now, one of these switches, the first one, this is our seed VSP, which is going to be required to bring up the Fabric. And the other 3 switches, they're currently running the Fabric, but we are going to completely flatten their configuration and see how they will be able to automatically rejoin, and the end devices that are connected to them will also be automatically be able to reuse the Fabric. Another thing to keep in mind is that in-band management is used by these VSPs, so they need the Fabric in order to be managed in the first place. So connected to the first switch, we have an access point, and the link is shown. And connected to the second switch, we have a telephone. And connected to the third switch, we have a client PC. You don't see the links for the client PC and the phone because we have no SNMP stack on those devices. Now, we're going to now have a look at our client PC, which is a virtual machine running in this window here, which is currently pinging a server IP address, which is 20.0.100.100. And this server IP is actually reachable somewhere across our seed device. So we need the Fabric for that client PC to reach that server. So what we're now going to do is we're going to factory default our 3 VSPs, number 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to select those 3 entries in XIQSE, and we're going to run a simple script, which we have prepared, which basically simply deletes the config and reboots the switches. That's executing. Basically, it's an SSH connection where the commands are executed. And we're just going to show those commands, which were actually executed against all 3 switches. Okay. And what we're now going to do is we're going to completely delete the switches from XIQSE. So they're going to be deleted from the database as if these switches had never existed. And we're going to look at our map again, and after a brief refresh, we should see all the switches gone. And if we go back to our client PC, you notice that he is no longer able to communicate with the server because the fabric is no longer there and those switches are now rebooting. Now back to the map, you see the switches have disappeared. So while the switches come back, we're going to take a look at the zero-touch configuration, which is going to allow us to rebuild the fabric and the provisioning for these devices as they come back. So we're going to look at the ZTP Plus device defaults. So the first thing is the use discovered. So when the switches come back, we're going to use the IP and management interface where the switches will have got their DHCP IP address. We will send an NTP server configuration, and we will specify an admin profile, which will define not only the credentials used to manage the switch, but also what credentials we want to configure on the switch as it is initially onboarded. And we'll take a look at those credentials. That was the entry here, which basically defines our SNMP v3 and CLI credentials, which are mapped through two different tables, one for credentials, CLI credentials, and one for SNMP credentials. Now, after the ZTP Plus onboarding has completed and the switch is added to the site, then these actions will be taken. So the device will be added to the site. We will go and configure the trap receiver and sysfil receiver on the device. We will add it to archive. We will add it to that particular map. And we're going to trigger a custom configuration, which is using a workflow, which is called Onboard VSP. And we're now going to take a look at this workflow. So this is the workflow in question. So this is a workflow which allows us to configure the radius server on the switch as it is added to the site and add that switch to XIQ SE's control engine. Then do some additional Autosense configuration, things like defining what the voice VLAN ISID is, and maybe ISS hello authentication and other stuff like that. And optionally make the switch a DVR leaf if we are going to deploy these VSPs in a DVR architecture. We'll now wait for the switches to actually call back into XMC, and we will see them appearing under this Discovered tab. So as we're waiting for this, a good thing to do is to set the refresh to 30 seconds. And another nice thing I like to do is to add a column which shows you the actual site ID, a site path, sorry. So initially devices will appear here as shown under world. But if you've automated the onboarding, then you'll see that the final XIQSE site will be reflected as the devices get onboarded. And we've sped up the demo here a little bit, but you can see here that two VSPs have now called in, and we're waiting for another one. Basically, a lot of things have already happened. The VSPs were already able to join the fabric, and we're able to do DHCP on the onboarding segment of the fabric. They got an IP address, they got DNS servers, they did a lookup for XIQSE. And when they got the IP address of XIQSE, they called in by ZTP Plus, and that's at that moment that they will appear in this Discovered tab. Now, the process does take some time because you can't override it. But what you'll see is that in a moment, we have fully automated it. So the site path will change to the desired onboarding site. And once the configuration is staged, we'll see that as the entries are deleted from this Discovered tab, they will be automatically added into the site. So one switch has been removed. And now all switches have gone, which means that we can now move to our Devices tab and see the devices in our site. And you can see that now they have all been re-added and that they're all back online. I think we'll look at our map as well. Obviously, the map is going to be a bit of a mess again, but we need to rearrange that a little bit. Okay. Let me save that. And the AP should come back online shortly. Just do a refresh to force XIQSC to repoll the device via SNMP. And there it is, it's back online. And what we like to do now is take notice of these links. We're going to look at these ports 112, 121, and 16, where the AP is connected. Okay, remember those port numbers. And we're now going to take a look at a flex view for Autosense. Okay, and we're just going to rearrange a little bit so that we see our port numbers there. So notice port 16, the Autosense state is FA WAP. This means that Autosense has detected that we have a fabric attach access point there. Therefore, fabric attach was already configured on that port. Whereas on ports 112 and 121, the VSP detected that it had another VSP as neighbor on those links, and therefore the Autosense state is NNI. So that means those ports were automatically configured to be fabric NNI ports. We didn't have to do any of that configuration. Now we go back to our client PC and notice that it has already resumed its connectivity towards the server. So that's fine. But our client PC was actually connected to a network access control port. So it had to perform 802.1x authentication before it was allowed onto the network. And as you notice, we didn't do any such configuration. So let's go under XIQ Site Engine End Systems, and we can see that is our client PC there, which was authorized. And I think we're going to look at the details of that now. Now, notice when we look at the location, so it's connected to our fourth VSP, the one with IP address 74 and port 16. And we'll look at that port briefly. But we also want to have a look at the radius attributes, which were sent back. So notice we're sending back the fabric attached radius attribute VLAN ISID with a 0 VLAN because we want an untagged binding. So what really matters is just the ISID. Okay. And what we'll now do is we'll go to that VSP. So we'll close out this tab, we'll go back to the VSP. And we're going to look at flex views on the VSP where the client is connected. Yes, and we're going to look at ISIDs, and we're going to be interested in looking at what ISIDs we have on our port 16. And you can see there, that is the ISID which was sent by the Radius server for our client, which has been there for provision on port 16 as an untagged binding. Okay. Next, we're going to look at the access point. So we're going to, again, keep in mind port 16. So our access point is a fabric attached device. So we're going to look at the fabric attached tab first. And the interesting thing to notice here is that you can see there at port 16 is a fabric attach interface. So Autosense did this for us. We didn't have to configure fabric attach on that port. It was done by Autosense. And if we just collapse that in the bottom table, you can see that now we have fabric attach on that port. It detected the fabric attach access point on that port. And the fabric attach access point is capable to request VLAN ISID bindings via fabric attach signaling. And you can see here that it requested these additional 3 ISIDs. So if we now go and have a look at the port and we look at the ISIDs on that port, so we're interested in the bottom table, you'll notice that we've got those fabric attached ISIDs are on the port because fabric attached signaling plumbed them there. We also have an untagged one that happens to be the untagged binding on which the access point was onboarded via Radius so that it could get its management DHCP untagged on that particular binding. Okay, and to complete, we're going to look at flex view on the third VSP, the one where the telephone is connected. And we're going to go again to the ISID table. And we're going to look at, basically, we can see in the top table that we have the Autosense ISID is defined. So this is one of the things which was set on the switch when the onboarding workflow onboarded the switch. We know what the Autosense voice is 2,200,000. And we can see that on the port where the telephone is connected, which is also port 16, that has been provisioned as a tagged binding, not untagged, it's tagged. So that's already there present for our telephone. So that completes our demo. Thank you for watching, and please enjoy the rest of Virtual Connect. Thank you.
Thanks, Ludo, for this demo. I think it was very good to show that we can provide an end-to-end fabric architecture and a fabric to the edge deployment where there's zero config on these edge switches, and really everything is pushed down by the network management infrastructure and automatically detected. So there is really full end-to-end automation solutions. So thanks, Ludo, again for the demo, and thank you everyone for listening, and have a good day and enjoy the rest of the Connect sessions.
Yeah, thank you.